But Baalbek, if there was one example, one ancient site on Earth that is evidence of a lost ancient advanced civilization?
What if one of the greatest ancient mysteries on Earth just got more impossible? In 2026, scientists returned to Baalbek, the ancient stone complex in Lebanon that has baffled engineers, archaeologists, and historians for centuries. This isn't just another dig. This wasn't a routine scan. They came back with tools humanity has never had before. And what they found doesn't fit our understanding of ancient technology or modern physics. We're talking about stone blocks weighing over 1,000 tons, stones so massive that even today's strongest cranes would struggle to lift them. And yet, they were cut, transported, and placed with surgical precision, thousands of years ago. No steel machinery, no engines, no explanations that fully add up. But here's where it gets unsettling. New measurements, subsurface scans, and material analysis revealed anomalies beneath the platform, patterns that shouldn't exist, alignments that defy chance, and engineering choices that make no sense if this site was built the way we've always been told. So the question is no longer how Baalbek was built. The real question is who really built it and why. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because once you see the evidence, you'll never look at ancient history the same way again. The impossible engineering that defies modern capabilities. Before we tell you what the 2026 expedition uncovered, you need to understand just how impossible Baalbek should be. The largest stone ever moved by modern machinery weighs 340 tons. At Baalbek, there are stones weighing 1,500 tons. Baalbek has the largest stones that were ever quarried in human history, the largest stones ever lifted, stacked, and transported in human history, and the largest stone columns in all of classical history, over 4 times heavier than anything modern engineering can handle, placed with millimeter precision. NASA's Vehicle Assembly Building Crane, one of the world's strongest, couldn't even lift these blocks. Imagine trying to move the Statue of Liberty. Now imagine moving 5 of them stacked together. That's the scale we're dealing with at Baalbek. The deafening silence in historical records. But here's what really makes your head spin, and what the 2026 researchers found even more disturbing. The Romans, who were obsessed with bragging about their engineering feats, wrote absolutely nothing about these massive stones. Not a single mention. Think about that for a moment. We're talking about the same civilization that documented everything, from building aqueducts to constructing the Colosseum. They loved showing off their architectural achievements. Yet, when it comes to Baalbek, known to them as Heliopolis, their records are completely silent about the Trilithon and these colossal blocks. You don't see the Roman foot in those stones, which is weird. You would expect to see some sort of breakdown of the Roman foot in these measurements, but they're not there at all. This silence is deafening, and it raises a huge question. Were these stones already there when the Romans arrived? Did they simply build their temples on top of an existing foundation that was far older than anyone realizes? It's like discovering that someone built a skyscraper on top of mysterious ancient foundations, but never bothered to mention who created those foundations or how they got there in the first place. The 2026 breakthrough, advanced scanning, reveals hidden patterns. This is where the 2026 expedition changes everything. When archaeologists finally got permission to use ground-penetrating radar and advanced 3D laser scanning technology at Baalbek, what they found challenged every existing theory. The subsurface scans revealed anomalies beneath the platform, geometric patterns that shouldn't exist, alignments that defy random chance. Pottery with cuneiform writing proves people were here thousands of years before the Romans. Stone blueprints carved directly into the temple floors show sophisticated planning. And most shocking of all, construction techniques that match buildings in Jerusalem with impossible precision. While everyone's been debating how the stones were moved, there's been over a century of serious scientific investigation quietly uncovering the real secrets of Baalbek. But the 2026 discoveries take it to an entirely new level. The megalithic stones that defy explanation. The megalithic stones of Baalbek in Lebanon have left every expert, historian, and engineer completely speechless. These stones are so huge that they challenge everything we know about ancient construction. But it doesn't stop there. Even modern construction techniques and sophisticated machinery cannot replicate these structures. Roman architecture always uses the most impressive things right in the front. You walk in the front of the thing, and that's where you're going to see the biggest stones, the most impressive, for obvious reasons. These are, in the back, completely on the opposite end of the entrance. Why would the Romans hide their greatest achievement? Unless they didn't build them. Every aspect of the structure, from the size of blocks used to their impeccable placement, represents outstanding engineering, the type of which we may never see elsewhere in the world. These aren't your average building blocks. The Trilithon, as they are called, is 3 huge limestone slabs stretching 62 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet wide. The weight of each one begins around 800 tons. But as extraordinary as that is, it isn't the most mind-blowing part. These giant stones aren't just sitting on the ground. They're suspended 23 feet in the air, fitted together perfectly with no space for even a speck of dust. Now think about this for a second. How do you even begin to move something that weighs as much as several jumbo jets, let alone lift it up and place it with surgical precision? And remember, this was accomplished thousands of years before we had cranes, hydraulic lifts, or modern machinery. The quarry's even bigger secrets. But here's where things get really interesting. About half a mile from the main temple, there's a quarry that holds even bigger secrets. It looks like the birthing place of the stones, with evidence that they weren't supposed to be the only ones. Sitting there, abandoned for centuries, are 3 unfinished stone blocks that make the Trilithon look small by comparison. The first one is what they call the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. It weighs nearly 1,000 tons. Then there's the Stone of the South, discovered in the 1990s, weighing a staggering 1,200 tons. And if that doesn't blow your mind, archaeologists found an even bigger one in 2014, the Forgotten Stone, which weighs around 1,500 tons. That's the weight of over 2,000 cars, sitting there, partially carved out of bedrock, abandoned mid-project. The 2026 analysis revealed something chilling about these abandoned stones. Advanced dating techniques and toolmark analysis show they were cut using methods that don't match any known ancient civilization's technology. The precision of the cuts, the uniformity of the surfaces, it all points to capabilities we can't explain. Even modern engineers are equally baffled. One study suggested you'd need over 500 people working with sophisticated machines to move a 557-ton block across flat ground, but moving it uphill and lifting it 23 feet into the air. Engineers today estimate you'd need 40,000 workers. That's more people than the population of most small cities. The 11,000-year mystery, continuous occupation, zero attribution. Now that you understand the engineering impossibility, here's what makes it even more mysterious. This site has been continuously occupied for 11,000 years. Each civilization that found it treated it as sacred, but none of them claimed to have built those massive foundation stones. In 1984, UNESCO recognized Baalbek as a World Heritage Site, putting it on the map as one of humanity's most important archaeological treasures. But this wasn't the first time Baalbek had captured the world's attention. This is a site that has witnessed over 11,000 years of human history. That means it was already standing when the Egyptians were wondering how to build the pyramids. Archaeological evidence shows people were living on this hilltop as early as 9000 BCE. That's mind-blowing when you think about it. The most shocking revelation came when researchers cleaned the Temple of Jupiter and found evidence that human settlement at Baalbek goes all the way back to the Neolithic period. We're talking about people living on this site potentially 10,000 years ago, long before anyone thought this place was significant. If people lived at Baalbek 10,000 years ago, it suggests the site's importance goes way deeper than Roman colonization, and that the massive foundation stones, the Trilithon and other megaliths, have been in place before colonization by the Romans. Hence, the complete silence by the Romans. The Persian connection that doesn't quite add up. A breakthrough came in 2004 when Lebanese University teamed up with the German Archaeological Institute for a major collaborative project focused on documenting those mysterious ancient quarries. What they found was mind-blowing. They discovered Persian pottery fragments marked with cuneiform writing dating back to the 6th and 4th centuries BCE. So were the Persians behind these giant structures. The Persian pottery fills a crucial gap, but we already know from the Neolithic discovery that the settlement goes way back 10 millennia ago. This raises a new question of whether the Persians have always been the original inhabitants of the land, therefore the ones who carved the monoliths. The Persians had organizational capacity, as well as the engineering knowledge to accomplish remarkable structures. The Persian Empire is known for massive construction projects, like those at Persepolis. However, here's the problem. The structures built by the Persians, like those at Persepolis, are still nothing compared to the monoliths at Baalbek. The Persepolis structures are made up of small blocks that weigh between 1 and 20 tons, while blocks at Baalbek weigh over 100 times more. Additionally, the Persians do not have any record crediting them with building the Baalbek stones. Just like the Romans, they were completely silent on the construction. The pottery fragments prove they were there, but the engineering challenge of the megaliths seems to exceed their demonstrated capabilities. The 2026 expedition confirmed this puzzle. Material analysis of the stones versus Persian-era artifacts shows no technological continuity. It's as if the massive stones existed before the Persians arrived, just as they existed before the Romans. The blueprints carved in stone. Let's discuss something most people never hear about: the actual Roman blueprints carved right into the site itself. These are not drawings on papyrus that crumbled away centuries ago. We're talking about architectural plans literally etched into the stone floors. The German excavations between 1900 and 1904 were the first to document these incredible finds. The most striking discovery was a detailed blueprint carved directly onto the floor of the Great Courtyard. This wasn't some rough sketch. It was a precise floor plan of part of the hexagonal courtyard, drawn to an impressive scale of about ratio 1 to 12.6. Think about what this means. These weren't just skilled laborers throwing stones together. These were master planners who carefully calculated every angle, every measurement, every design element before they placed a single block. However, the most shocking connection emerged when researchers took a closer look at Podium 1, which is the foundation supporting the 6 massive columns that still dominate the skyline today. When they analyzed the construction techniques, they found something absolutely startling. The style and methods used in Podium 1 were virtually identical to Herodian architecture found in Jerusalem. These were precise matches. Both sites used the exact same pattern of alternating headers and stretchers. Both featured an identical drafted margin stonework. Even the average course height was exactly the same, at 3.6 feet. That's way too specific to be a coincidence. This suggests there might have been direct involvement of Herodian builders at Baalbek, or at least shared construction traditions connecting these sites across the ancient world. The failed theories. Why nothing fully explains Baalbek. So if these stones are so impossible to move, how do skeptics explain Baalbek? Let's test their theories against the actual evidence, and you'll see why none of them fully work, and why the 2026 findings make it even more complex. Theory 1. Wooden rollers and ramps. At first glance, it sounds pretty logical. You place these monster stones on cylindrical wooden logs, which reduces friction, and then you just push or pull them across the ground. Simple physics, right? Wrong. When archaeologists actually tried to test this theory in real life, it was a complete disaster. Richard Atkinson, a respected archaeologist, attempted to move just a replica Stonehenge bluestone, a tiny stone compared to Baalbek's giants. The moment they started pulling it uphill, the whole thing began sliding sideways uncontrollably. In another experiment, researchers were transporting a replica statue when it suddenly lost balance, tumbled right off the rollers, and smashed into pieces. Now, picture trying this with stones that are literally hundreds of times heavier across nearly a mile of rocky, uneven terrain. Theory 2. Roman engineering genius. So, researchers pivoted to what seemed like a more promising explanation. Roman engineering genius. And let's be honest, the Romans were absolutely incredible builders. They created crane systems that were centuries ahead of their time. Their basic model, the trispastos, used a simple setup: a winch, rope, and 3 pulleys. Then they upgraded to the pentaspastos with 5 pulleys. But their heavy-duty machine was the polyspastos with 15 pulleys, 4 masts, and just 4 people to lift 2.2 tons. When they added tread wheels to the mix, they could handle up to 4.4 tons. But even when you give ancient workers full credit, Baalbek is still in a league of its own. Margaret van Es from the German Archaeological Institute suggested that human-driven capstans could explain how the Baalbek stones were moved. On paper, it sounds like a solid theory. But here's where the math completely falls apart. Even the most advanced Roman cranes couldn't carry more than 6 tons. 6 tons. We're talking about stones at Baalbek that weigh 800 to 1,000 tons. The Baalbek stones were more than 100 times heavier than what their best equipment could handle. The 2026 computer simulations confirmed this impossibility. Using advanced physics modeling, researchers tried every known ancient technique, and every single simulation resulted in structural failure, stone breakage, or catastrophic accidents. There's simply no known ancient method that works. The supernatural theories and why they persist. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Baalbek has spawned some absolutely wild theories over the centuries, and it's not hard to see why. When you're staring at stones that weigh as much as these stones, perfectly fitted with ancient technology, your brain starts reaching for explanations that feel as extraordinary as what you see. The supernatural theories go way back. Local legends claimed that Cain built the temple while wandering the earth under God's curse. Other stories said Nimrod ordered giants to construct it as part of the Tower of Babel project. Some whispered about the Nephilim, those mysterious giants mentioned in ancient texts, being the real architects. But in our modern age, the most popular theory has gone full sci-fi. The ancient alien hypothesis suggests that only beings with technology far beyond anything humans possessed could have moved and positioned these massive stones. So why do these extraordinary theories persist? Maybe it's because ordinary explanations don't fire up our imagination the way extraordinary ones do. Philosopher Daniel Dennett once suggested that when people lack imagination about what's actually possible, they lean toward supernatural explanations. Baalbek continues to captivate us because it sits right on that border between documented fact and tantalizing legend. There are no detailed ancient records explaining exactly who ordered its construction or how the work was organized. That silence creates this perfect blank canvas where people can project their own theories and stories. What the 2026 evidence really tells us. So what did the 2026 scientists actually find? The advanced ground-penetrating radar revealed subsurface chambers and voids that don't appear on any historical plans. The 3D laser scanning showed that the megalithic stones align with astronomical features with precision that suggests deliberate astronomical orientation, something that requires not just engineering skill, but sophisticated astronomical knowledge. Material analysis using cutting-edge spectrometry revealed that the stone surfaces show evidence of thermal alteration at temperatures that shouldn't be achievable with ancient tools. The patterns suggest exposure to intense, focused heat. But from what source? Most intriguing of all, the team discovered carved symbols deep within the foundation stones that had been hidden for millennia. These symbols don't match any known ancient language or architectural notation system. They're geometric, precise, and appear to follow mathematical principles. German researcher Margret van Es made another crucial discovery when she studied how these massive stones were actually cut. She found that the ancient builders cut the megaliths along natural fissures between rock layers. This technique made it much easier to remove enormous blocks without cracking or breaking them. What's really interesting is that this same method shows up in other Roman projects, like the famous Pont du Gard aqueduct in France. So, we know the Romans had this technique in their engineering toolkit. But using a technique doesn't mean you built the foundation. It could mean you simply added to it. The unanswered questions that keep growing. After centuries of research, countless experiments, and heated academic debates, and now, with the most advanced scanning technology of 2026, we are still left scratching our heads. No single theory fully explains how this was accomplished. The stones were simply too massive for any lifting technology we know the Romans possessed, and dragging them across that rocky terrain seems virtually impossible. This has led to some interesting alternative theories. Some researchers insist there must have been lost engineering techniques, sophisticated methods that were perfected by ancient builders but never written down or passed on to future generations. The 2026 evidence seems to support this. The thermal signatures, the precision, the astronomical alignments all point to knowledge that exceeds what we attribute to ancient civilizations. Others have suggested that maybe the stones were never transported at all. What if they were quarried and partially shaped right at the construction site? It's an intriguing possibility, but even that doesn't fully explain the precision and scale of what we see. And that raises the ultimate question. Why? Why would ancient builders choose to work with stones so impossibly large when smaller ones would have been just as effective? What drove them to attempt something that pushes the boundaries of what seems physically possible? even by today's standards. The more we learn about Baalbek through scientific investigation, the more questions seem to emerge. Each discovery doesn't just add to our knowledge, it completely reshapes what we thought we knew about this incredible site. The journey through civilizations. Scholars believe Baalbek comes from Baal-Nebek, which means Lord of the Source. This refers to a natural spring near the site that likely made this hilltop a sacred place of life and abundance for ancient peoples. Around 3200 BCE, the Phoenicians took over and turned Baalbek into something truly spectacular. They built a massive temple complex dedicated to their gods, Hadad and Baal, the sky god, who probably gave the city its name. You can even still find traces of this Phoenician temple buried beneath the later Roman temple of Jupiter. But here's where things get really interesting. Many researchers suspect that those massive stones we've been talking about, the Trilithon and the other massive blocks forming the Western Wall, might actually date back to this Phoenician period, not the Roman era. That means we could be looking at 5,000-year-old engineering that involved moving and precisely placing stones weighing hundreds of tons with nothing but human power, basic tools and techniques we can barely comprehend today. When Alexander the Great conquered this region in 334 BCE, he gave Baalbek a makeover, including renaming it Heliopolis, the city of the sun. But the real transformation began when the Romans took over. First came Pompey the Great in 64 BCE. Then Julius Caesar made it an official Roman colony in 47 BCE. But it was Emperor Augustus, around 16 BCE, who really went all out, launching the most ambitious construction project the ancient world had ever seen. Interestingly, the Romans didn't just bulldoze everything and start fresh. Instead, they merged their god Jupiter with the local deity Baal, creating this powerful hybrid god called Jupiter Baal. The construction timeline is staggering. Emperor Nero continued building the massive Temple of Jupiter. Emperor Antoninus Pius threw in the Temple of Bacchus. And finally, the Severan dynasty completed the whole complex with the Temple of Venus in the 3rd century. But then, Christianity changed everything. When Emperor Constantine converted in the early 300s CE, construction stopped. Emperor Theodosius went even further. He destroyed pagan statues, tore down altars, and converted the sacred spaces into Christian churches. By 637 CE, Muslim armies conquered Baalbek, and the site transformed again. This time the temples became a fortress, also known as Qala. It's why the locals still call it Qalat Baalbek today. Over the centuries, dynasty after dynasty left their mark: the Umayyads, Abbasids, Fatimids, and Ayyubids. What we have today is essentially a historical layered cake. Every civilization that touched this place left something behind. But here's the thing that keeps haunting researchers. Who were the very first people to lift those impossibly massive foundation stones into place? The verdict: an impossible mystery that just got more impossible. When you stand at Baalbek today, looking up at those towering columns and impossible stone blocks, it's hard not to feel like you're looking at something that refuses to give up all its secrets. It's a mystery that keeps whispering new questions about what ancient civilizations were truly capable of achieving. The 2026 scientific expedition didn't solve the mystery of Baalbek. If anything, it made it deeper, stranger, and more unsettling. The subsurface anomalies, the thermal signatures, the hidden symbols, the astronomical alignments, they all point to something we don't fully understand. The truth is, whether built by ingenious humans with lost knowledge or by forces we're only beginning to comprehend, Baalbek remains one of the most extraordinary achievements in human history. And that's pretty incredible, either way you look at it. The stones are real. The impossibility is measurable. The silence in historical records is deafening. And now, in 2026, we have more evidence than ever that something extraordinary happened at Baalbek, something that challenges everything we think we know about ancient human capabilities. So, what really happened at Baalbek? That's a question that may haunt us for generations to come. But one thing is certain: the 2026 findings prove that we're only scratching the surface of this ancient enigma. And beneath those massive stones, there are still secrets waiting to be uncovered. Thanks for watching. If you're yet to do so, it's time to smash the like button. And if you enjoy deep dives like this, we have many more ancient mysteries to explore with you. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.